the Chuck Shoot Podcast.
So you think there's some serial killers that are out there right now that just haven't been caught?
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened with Sam Little a couple of years ago. He came out and said he'd been killing for decades to the tune of 93 victims. We didn't know anything about him during that time. He was very clever about the types of victims he picked, which he knew would be under the radar, mostly Black, female, drug-addicted prostitutes or runaways or people who got off buses or people that they just wouldn't command very many resources for an investigation. And he was right. He then confessed, and it turns out he had been killing people. And so there were a number of unsolved cold cases attributed to him. They did not link 93 to him, but they linked over 50.
Was that one in Ohio, or where was that?
He was all over the country.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in Ohio, Cleveland.
Okay.
But California, Texas, Florida.
I had on somebody from this website called the Murder Accountability Project, and we spent a lot of the episode talking about the Chicago Strangler, because that seems to be one. He thinks there is a serial killer in Chicago, that all these strangulations happening there are linked to one person.
Maybe.
Do you have thoughts on that? Have you studied that case at all?
Until we get the person and find out if we can, unless there's DNA that links them, if you're just looking at behavior or geography, something like that, maybe. It's speculation. Even Jack the Ripper with the so-called canonical 5 victims, they might not all be linked either.
Really? Well, you thought that Jack the Ripper could also be way more victims too, right? Is that
or less?
Okay.
Or no Jack the Ripper at all.
Yeah. You just never know. Yeah, this guy has like all this data, and he looks at these data points, and that's what he's coming to that conclusion. So
data points always need interpretation.
Sure. Yeah, nothing's like you said, until we catch the person, we don't know for sure. But the DNA definitely does help a lot, right?
It does, because that makes a link among scenes and among victims. If you have victims who knew each other, or you have the same kind of victim in the same kind of trade, for example, sex work, or they all worked at the same gym, or something like that, you have more likelihood. But it's all probability analysis. And probability analysis has an error rate, and the size of that error rate is related to how much you're speculating. When somebody says there's a serial killer that will link all these crimes, like the trucker idea that there's all these truck routes across the country linked to all these either missing or murdered women, maybe, but until we catch them and can definitively place them there, there's an error rate. And we could be wrong. So I don't like saying, that looks good, that's a serial killer. I don't know that.
Do you think that the killers now are watching these crime shows and things and trying to pick up tips and tricks on how to not get caught?
They've always been doing that. BTK, Dennis Rader, went to criminal justice classes.
Yeah.
And he was in a classroom with one of the pathologists who was talking about one of the victims in the autopsy. There he was sitting there listening to his own work.
That's creepy. So one of the things he did was he turned the heat up in the rooms. Did that actually even do anything?
He only did that once. I mean, he'd read novels. If something sounded interesting, he'd try it. He only did that once. Because, that boils time-since death estimates.
Okay, so it does do something, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but wouldn't have helped in that case. That was the Oteros wouldn't have helped, because the younger kids went to school. Their parents were alive. When they came home, they found their parents dead. So there's a very small time frame in there. It's really not going to matter that much. And honestly, it was just something he was trying, not because he was so clever, but he read about it and thought, let me do this.
But that's kind of a myth, that people think that these serial killers are like these Hannibal Lecters, really smart people. That's typically not the case. Most of them are below average intelligence, right?
Well, I mean, we're talking about, we have documented over 5,000 serial killers. So the IQ is going to span similar to that population as it does to the population at large. There are some who've been street smart, but not IQ smart. There have been some IQ smart, but not street smart. Many of them are just average or even lower than average. But look at Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. His IQ was definitely low average, and yet he got away with at least 49, if not more, murders because he was street smart. He was clever.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I wondered about that. Like I read that too, that his IQ was below average. But he's one of the most prolific serial killers.
And he beat a polygraph.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. How did he do that?
When you believe your own narrative, when you're sure about your own story, it doesn't register. Polygraphs only, they're taking body readings, and they're not truth detectors or lie detectors. They read physiological reactions to things. And if he's a psychopath, he already has low physiological arousal in the first place. If he's practiced, I don't want to teach people how to beat a polygraph, so I'm not going to go into all that here, but there certainly are ways to do it. And if he's done any looking it up at all, now there was no internet in the 1980s for someone like him to look stuff up, but certainly if you lie easily, because they have no investment in truth. They have investment only in getting away with doing what they want to do. So if you have no investment in truth, it's not going to register in your body as a lie.
Because this is the way the lie detectors work is they register like anxiety and guilt. And he did not feel guilt or anxiety about his crime.
He was helping the police.
Is what he thought. Yeah, that's what his defense was.
Yeah, because he thought, eliminating sex workers. That was what the police wanted. He was doing the right thing.
And a majority of the serial killers are psychopaths. Or tell me the difference between psychopath and sociopath. I always confuse those two.
Well, first let's talk about the word psycho. Covers two different distinct populations: psychotic individuals and psychopathic individuals. Psychotic individuals are disconnected from reality. Their thoughts are disordered. We have some serial killers who were psychotic. Now, if they also are psychopaths, maybe something like a schizopath, they're really dangerous because they have disordered thinking on top of no remorse and no conscience and nothing like that. The sociopath is an older word that comes from the 1950s and 60s. Some people still like to use it. Most professionals aren't really using it. There's no diagnostic instrument for it. What the diagnostic instrument is for is antisocial personality disorder. And psychopathy also has a diagnostic instrument, but different countries use different things. So our country tends to use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, which is antisocial personality disorder. Okay. They don't talk about psychopaths unless they distinctly use the psychopathy checklist. But that psychopathy checklist is used in a lot of other countries. I personally prefer psychopath. There's not really a distinction because there's no diagnostic instrument for sociopath. It's an older word. It doesn't mean much to me.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I read a book called The Sociopath Next Door, and this was all about how
I think she took all the psychopath stuff.
Okay, because it said 1 in 6 people are sociopath, and it sounds scary, but then she explains that, people like a surgeon or people in high military jobs and things, they need to have that disconnect from what they're doing.
You can have that disconnect without being psychopathic.
Right.
That's called a clinical approach to things. I have it when I'm working with clients or even with serial killers. So that doesn't make me a psychopath or a sociopath. That is a mental state that's, you're doing your work. It's clinical. And if you don't have a diagnostic instrument for sociopath, what does it even mean? Doesn't mean anything.